Struggle and tragedy are never something we enjoy in life, and yet they are the burdens that can guide our way and inspire us to do great things, whether they be for the side of good or the side of evil. Welcome back, Nerd Squad! Today we're going to be exploring some of the tragic and grim origins of some of our favorite comic book characters, and see which path their traumas guided them to as we count down the top 10 dark origin stories that really happened part 2. And if you missed out on the part 1 of this list, you can click on over here to check that out. Be sure to stick around to the end of this video as well, where I'll have some bonus content coming your way. Alright, now let's get counting. Number 10. Doctor Strange. Dr. Stephen Strange was an accomplished and world-renowned surgeon until a tragic car accident. While he survived the crash, the nerves in his hands were severely damaged, making it impossible for him to recover well enough to return to his work as a neurosurgeon. Strange was egotistical to the point that he refused to do any other work in the medical community, attempting to use all of his funds to try and find a cure for his hands, and eventually sinking into a deep depression and alcohol addiction. Previous to his accident, it was his parents' death and the fact that he found great success early on that caused him to become materialistic in his pursuits, caring less and less for his patients and more about the acclaim and the money that he was making. Eventually, he heard of the mystical power of the Ancient One and used his last bit of money to set out to see if they might possess healing abilities strong enough to heal him. From there, he would become a reluctant, stubborn, and eventually extremely loyal and determined student, and would go on to become the new Sorcerer Supreme and magical hero known as Doctor Strange. Number 9. Iron Man. Tony Stark has led quite the privileged life, basically being born with a silver spoon in his mouth, so you might think he's got it made when it comes to superhero origins. But let's not forget what it took to get him to build and operate his Iron Man suit, and what inspired him to become a hero. Tony Stark was giving a demonstration of his technology to the military when there was an explosion. Stark was injured and taken prisoner by a terrorist who wanted to use his brilliant mind to have him create weapons for them. Shrapnel lodged into Tony Stark's chest moved ever closer to his heart, and it was the help of another brilliant prisoner, Nobel Prize winner and physicist Ho Yinsen, whom Stark admired, that allowed Tony to survive and inspired him to build the Iron Man Mark I armor, which allowed him to escape, but at the cost of Yinsen's life, and put him on the path to becoming a hero. Number 8. Rocket Raccoon. Rocket Raccoon in the Marvel Cinematic Universe alludes to his character's dark origins when he gets into an argument with the other Guardians of the Galaxy, insisting they consider him to be a joke, and revealing that there is a lifetime of pain in his past which gives him the form and personality that he has today, as a being who was heavily experimented on, being torn apart and put back together more times than he can count. Previous to this origins though, in the comics, Rocket was simply one of a group of animals given heightened intelligence and awareness by robotic beings, who sought to escape their duties of looking after mental patients in their care. Rocket was one of the animals who stepped in to take on these duties. Later on, however, even in the comics, while out exploring space, he would be abducted and taken to a place known as Lab World, where he was then studied and experimented on. Number 7. Two-Face. Harvey Dent went from being on the side of the law and one of the biggest real-life everyday fighters for justice in Gotham to becoming one of the city's most iconic villains. It all started when he was disfigured. During a trial, crime boss Sal Maroni threw acid in Dent's face, scarring him for life and driving him insane. Dent lost his faith in justice as a result of this incident, and instead left it up to fate to decide whether he would behave heroically or criminally, often known for flipping a coin to decide his victim's fate. Number 6. Spider-Man. Spider-Man's whole brooding and moody sensibility and his battle with depression, which would only grow over time, all stems back to his origins. The death and loss of Uncle Ben is what inspired Spider-Man to become a hero and also gives him a lifetime of weighty regrets. Uncle Ben's death could have been avoided in Spider-Man's mind if only he'd cared enough to use his powers to stop a thief in his path, who would shortly after end Ben's life. To Peter Parker, he may as well have pulled the trigger himself. This tragic and dark story would inspire the hero to use his powers more responsibly, but would also haunt him for the rest of his life. Number 5. Dr. Manhattan. John Osterman's origin story as Dr. Manhattan is truly horrific. John found himself trapped inside a test chamber when he went to retrieve his watch, as it underwent a scheduled experiment. The experiment caused John to be taken apart at an atomic level, removing his intrinsic field, which is a term used in Watchmen to describe what holds atoms together, the force that does that. It's not actually a true scientific term, fun fact. As such, he was granted powers over the intrinsic fields of all things, using his powers to build himself a body 3 months later and physically manifesting in the cafeteria of his workplace. John's life would be forever changed, and in becoming a god, he would not only look different, but would also become less human as the years went on, experiencing a detached feeling from life on Earth. Number 4. Batman. Bruce Wayne was just a young boy when he lost his parents. They were both killed point blank in front of him one night after the family had left the movie theater where they just watched Zorro, and attempted to take a shortcut down an alley. A thief named Joe Chill killed them during a robbery, leaving Bruce alone in the world, save for the family butler, Alfred, who would become like a father to him. It was this tragic start to his life that caused young Bruce to grow up fast and run in with a bat that inspired him to become the Dark Knight of Gotham, known as Batman. It's also been argued countless times over that this traumatic event made young Bruce unstable, which is perhaps why he has turned to a life of vigilantism, unable to heal the mental wounds his parents' tragic deaths caused. Number 3. GAMORA. GAMORA is the last surviving member of her race, known as the Zen Huberis. They were a peaceful people who were all killed by a religious order when they resisted their attempt at dominance in the galaxy. Thanos managed to save GAMORA and raised her as his daughter, turning her into his own weapon, modifying her with tech to grant her superhuman abilities. He planned on using her to defeat the villain known as Magus, who was also Thanos' enemy. While Thanos seemed to occasionally show GAMORA fatherly affection, there would come a time when she would turn on him, acknowledging him as someone who had used her for his own means and denouncing her allegiance to him, seeing him for what he was, a mad tyrant and a villain who was selfish and cold-hearted, seeking only to bring death to whatever planet, galaxy, or universe he was in. Number 2. Raven. If we go back to the original New Earth continuity, Raven's origins are pretty freaking dark. Her mother was part of a cult, and when she tried to escape and leave, the members prevented her from doing so by summoning a powerful demon named Trigon. This demon then forcefully mated with her. From this, Raven was conceived. She was born Angela Roth and raised to control her emotions, to help prevent her from losing control of her demonic powers and to basically prevent her from giving in to the dark side. She was sort of like a Jedi, but with a demonic heritage. When she learned of Trigon's evil plans, she attempted to stop him and sought help from the Justice League, who actually refused to help her because of her demonic heritage, prompting Raven to work harder to become a hero and putting her on a path to become one of the Teen Titans. Number 1. Spawn. Spawn was originally Albert Al Simmons, an assassin who was murdered by his friend while on a mission. He then is condemned to a life in hell, but makes a bargain to return to the land of the living so that he can see his wife one last time. However, he must agree to become a Hellspawn in order to do so. The unfortunate side effect of which, that he doesn't learn until later, is that he will forget his memories somewhat, so he returns to life, but only as a faint recollection of his past, and what's more, his body is still kinda undead, making him appear as a horrific monster. So even if he had remembered his wife's name straight away, he would not be able to reveal himself to her. When he finally does remember his wife, he discovers she is remarried to one of his friends, and they now have a daughter. He also realizes that 5 years have passed since his death. Not what he had originally expected when he made that bargain. Spawn, lost in the world, is now forced to search for a new purpose while also conserving his powers, as once they're fully used up, he will return to hell. Thank you so much for watching, Nerd Squad. What characters do you feel have the darkest origins? How do you feel about superheroes with particularly dark or traumatic pasts? Do you prefer when a hero or villain has a less dramatic or intense backstory? Let us know in the comments below. And speaking of comments, it's time to turn to some comments from one of our latest videos, Top 10 WandaVision Easter eggs you missed. Harold2HS comments, I still can't believe the MCU is actually giving Wanda her actual reality warping powers. I knew they'd be coming eventually. I personally love how it appears as though Wanda has great control over them in that trailer, but she also still struggles to discern between reality and what she has created. Very comic book accurate in my opinion. Lorenzo Luna writes, I'm so glad this will potentially lead up to House of M. Mutants may finally be introduced to the MCU. Yes! I'm wondering if they'll actually reverse it and Wanda will actually help create mutants in the world of the MCU. Or if it will be revealed that years ago, outside of what we've seen so far, Wanda somehow erased them from existence, which is why they've been absent all this time. So exciting! What would be really cool is if we also found a way to welcome Scarlet Witch back into mutantdom as well via this story. but I'm not holding my breath for that. Flammable shares, all I know is that I need Wiccan and Hulkling's recent marriage in an official MCU movie. I will guarantee cry happy tears in the theater, I'm telling you. Ugh, I totally agree with you, I feel that. I actually still want like a big fancy flashback wedding issue for those two, because we've seen little glimpses into that, but we haven't really seen the full thing. And that's all the time we have for comments today. Be sure to comment below for a chance to have your thoughts and feels shouted out in a future list. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight. Till next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.